everyone, and welcome to Asian Viewpoints with Mary Sit. Well, whenever a special moment happens in life, most of us just pull out a cell phone and snap a selfie. Or if it's really special, we hand that phone to someone standing nearby and say, "Can you take a picture of the two of us?" But there are moments in life that should be treasured forever through the ages. And that's when you need a professional photographer to do a professional portrait. With us today to explain more is award-winning photographer Alvin Gee. For the past 40 years, he has been taking pictures of the rich and famous in Houston, as well as everyday families. Alvin, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Mary.
So, for 40 years you've been doing this. How do you stay motivated and keep excited about doing this?
It's just a really exciting profession. I really enjoy taking photographs, and it's, making people look their best is what I enjoy doing.
So when someone does need a professional photographer to take a portrait, I'm thinking a headshot for professional use, but what are other occasions and milestones where families say, hey, let's call a photographer a professional?
Oh, sure. There's milestones, when your parents have been married 50 years, or if there's an anniversary. It's a great time to get generational type of portraits where we get the matriarch and the patriarch, the children, the grandchildren. It's a very sweet portrait.
So that's a good idea when your parents are reaching that golden anniversary.
Yeah.
Of course, we think about weddings, and do people do it for births of new children too? And the family expands, they do another family portrait.
Sure, those are milestones, and those are great. High school graduations are also very, very important. And when children go off to college, that's another very, very monumental opportunity to take a family portrait.
So what can a professional photographer capture in a headshot, for instance, or in a family portrait that, selfies just can't get, or friends, is taking snapshots with their cameras?
There's basically three things that make a very, very nice portrait: the lighting, the posing, and then most importantly, the expression. So with practice, you can create a very, very nice photograph, but sometimes it's really nice to leave it to a professional photographer. We do lots of business portraits, and it's a pleasure to do them. And there's different trends in business portraits and headshots. Some like to take them on location, some like white backgrounds, some people like just the traditional gray backgrounds. And it just depends on what works for that particular client.
What's the trend these days?
What's the trend? There's, when you want to look your best, that's the most important thing. And it could be in your office. The majority of people do come into the studio for portraits because, we have our props, we have our lighting, we have our backgrounds, we have all the things, all the amenities to make someone very, very comfortable.
It's a controlled environment, and it's a beautiful environment too. It's just a gorgeous studio you have.
Yeah. Thanks. And sometimes people need a little bit more help, and it takes teamwork. And, we do have hair and makeup artists that are available. And then we always encourage people to come in the morning, because usually most people look their best in the morning, because late in the day, guys get 5 o'clock shadows, clothes gets a little frumpy. And so most people look their best in the morning. And that's again, we always encourage people, take your portrait 2 hours after your biological clock wakes you up. So
okay,
that
that's a great tip. And I've seen, like, at the back when you go open up a new book or something and you see the portrait of the artist or the author, some of those pictures are really bad, Alvin. And I'm thinking, what? They managed to get a book published and they don't bother to get a professional photographer who's really good to get a good headshot of them? I'm not kidding. It looks like their friend took it or something, with these trees growing behind their head, or just the lighting's not right. It looks sort of muddy, or it's not that flattering. I mean, have you noticed that in book covers at the back of it?
I've been very fortunate. The books that I've looked at, it's a fairly good looking portrait. But you're right. Every once in a while, I'll see one that I wish that they would have invested in a professional to do that.
So lighting and pose, and you can learn that thing, but how do you get the expression, the best expression now? Because that's an art, I think. You can't just say smile, right? What do you do to get someone comfortable and to capture that best expression?
It's my job, to relax them, and just take some really nice images. And I always tell the client, we're not rushed. We can just create something very, very special for you. And then I do photograph people from one side to the other, because sometimes people have asymmetrical faces. You want to capture that. Yeah.
And just recently, you've done some beautiful portraits of the Miss Chinatown Houston candidates, and you've been doing that every year for, I believe, 40 years. Is that right?
It's a joy to photograph the Miss Chinatown Houston pageant. It's a wonderful scholarship for each of the contestants. It's a social event of the year, and it's been my honor, my pleasure to be a part of that.
Now, is it easier to shoot someone who's so beautiful anyway? I mean, they're gorgeous and they're young. So is it really easy to get that best angle from them? Or really, is it hard to, you still have to do the same techniques to relax them and get them to have that personality in their eyes?
Oh, right, you do. I mean, you never want to show favoritism and just say, okay, this is going to be an easy photograph. It's never easy.
Yeah. Has your approach to photography changed over the years, Alvin?
It has changed some. Before I got into photography professionally, photography was transitioning from black and white to color. And then I guess the most recent thing is digital photography. And so we went from film to analog to digital, which was a wonderful change. And then, the next big change is probably going to be AI with that kind of computer-assisted photography, to improve. I'm a kind of a purist at heart. I don't want to make anyone look different, because years down the road, you want those grandchildren to look at their grandparents and say, "Oh, I see the resemblance." It's right. It's very sweet. So
you don't want to take a look and make it too artificial looking, and I mean, you want them to look like themselves,
right?
Even though you touch up the photos a little bit, you still want them to look like themselves, recognizable, right?
Yes, exactly right.
Alvin, you've built a successful business over the past 4 decades. What advice would you give to an aspiring young photographer who's starting out today?
Well, there's 2 ways to learn photography. You could go to a school like Sam Houston State University or Brooks Institute and take classes. The way I learned, I have a degree in communications at the University of Houston. I took a lot of photographs there. And then I worked for a portrait and wedding studio. And then I worked for a commercial studio. So apprenticing, learning from someone else, to see how they handle their failures, to see how they handle their successes, is just a wonderful opportunity to learn photography. So that's how I learned. If someone wants to be a photographer, I feel like you really need to be passionate about it. I feel like God gives everybody talents. Some can sing, some can write, some can be photographers, they can be doctors, lawyers. All you need to do is find your niche and then just go at it in a very, very positive way. Well,
Alvin, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button below and be sure to subscribe to this channel. I'll be dropping a new show every Thursday. I'm Mary Sitt. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.